Today we are going over relations and functions. What is a function? A function is where each input has only one output. If there are repeating x values, then it is not a function. So some examples of that would be if I saw the relation of these numbers. So that relationship of numbers here, these would be a function because the x values, so remember it goes x comma y, the x values are not repeating. The y value can repeat, but each x value does not. Also, you can think of it this way. So think of it as a vending machine, right? So I'm going to hit a button on the vending machine. Okay, here's my little person. I'm going to hit a button, so like C1. C1 is going to get me a piece of candy. Well, my input would be C1, my output would be the candy. If somebody else comes to the vending machine, this little person, and they put C1 in, they expect to get candy as well, the same kind that I had. Now, if a third person comes to the vending machine, maybe they hit C2, well, C2 gives you a bag of chips. Or somebody else wants C3. Well, C3, hitting that button on the vending machine, can also be a bag of chips because you can have more than one item in a different spot. So you can have the same kinds of chips in two different spots. But if they hit the same number, they expect the same outcome. So when I put my x into this function, think of a function, it'll be a mathematical machine, but if x goes in, I expect the answer to come out. So every time I put an x in, I expect to get a y value out of that function that is in the same relationship. Constant of proportionality. So that is y equals k times x. I'll explain that in a second here. So a proportional relationships have the constant or equivalent ratio of y over x. This constant ratio of y over x is called the constant of proportionality and is represented by the letter k. So constant of proportionality, the constant is what changes every time. Here's an example. Hours and money. Okay, hours is going to be my x, money is going to be my y. If I work 0 hours, I make 0 money. If I work 1 hour, I make $5. If I work 2 hours, I make 10. If I work 3 hours, I make $15. So, looking at this, I know what the constant is. I know what it changes by. But if I didn't, okay, let's look at it this way. So let's take maybe those two, for example. So I need to figure out the constant, so the change. So k equals y over x. K is the change, okay? It's the part that changes. It's my slope. So my y value was 10. My x value was 2, so 10 over 2. Looking at this, I can simplify this fraction. I know I can make it simplifies to 5 over 1. Or, even simpler than that, 5 over 1 is just 5. So, on the example I just gave you, k equals 5. Now, if I want to write an equation with this, I would write y equals 5x. Now, let's say x, I already said x was my hours, right? So I can use my equation that I created to figure out how much money I would have if I worked 4 hours. So let's say if x equals 4, and I take this and put it into my equation, y equals 5 times 4. 5, because I just put in 4 was what I had for x, right? I took the x, and I replaced it with 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Y equals 20. So down here on my table, I would do 4 hours, continue my table on, and I would have $20. So the K is the proportional constant. So here is some examples. So with a table, to determine the constant of proportionality from the table, create a ratio of y over x for each ordered pair and then simplify. So number 1 says, the table shows the amount of money a teenager made for babysitting a certain number of hours. So we're going to go ahead and just pick any part of the table. We know we do y over x, so we have $48 over 4. Now we need to simplify. So I'm going to do some math over here. 4 goes into 48. How many times 4 can go into 4? 1 time. 4. Subtract it. That would be 0. Bring the 8 down. 8. 4 goes into 8. How many times? 2. 2 times 4 gives me 8. That will 0 out. So 12. So K equals $12, or just 12. So now the equation. And we said to write an equation, we want y equals k times x. K or kx. So to figure out what y is, you need to times x by 12. So y equals 12x is the equation to find out how much money you make babysitting. X, of course, is going to be the number of hours. Put it into the equation, and you find out how much money you make. Now, number 2. The table shows the number of miles a car traveled over a certain number of hours. So we can just pick any part of that. Remember, we have y over x, so I have 110 over 2. 2 goes into 110. I don't know how many times, so let's figure this out. 2 can't go into 1. 2 can go into 11. It'll go in 5 times. I'll get 10. I subtract. I have a remainder of 1. Bring the 0 down. 2 goes into 10. How many times? It goes in 5 times. 10, I'll have a 0 remainder, so 55. So K equals 55. So 55. Now to create that equation, I just take this number I found and put it in the equation for K. So y equals K times X. So y equals 55x.